Welcome back to the Casual Combat MMA podcast for episode 9. Cal, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. A little bit down. Just watched my Packers play a really ugly game against the Patriots that just finished up and was not really fun to watch.
Yeah, did we get up 10-0
Yep.
and then lose 38-10?
Yep. Back-to-back interceptions. Then things just kind of started rolling downhill and kept going.
Yeah, so it's already a negative start to the episode, but we're not here to talk football. We are here to talk MMA. So last night we had not a great stacked card, but we had some good fights within the fights that did occur, and let's talk a little bit about those. I've got 3 that I wanted to talk about specifically, and they just so happen to be the last 3 cards or the last 3 fights on the main card. Starting off with Jimmy Crute. I said that he looked really, really on point. He had clean striking, and what stood out to me and what Cormier was saying is that he looked really confident. He was walking him down, and he, had a straight back. He was not, sometimes you see guys go out there and they're kind of twitchy and they're kind of hesitant. He looked very relaxed out there. He seemed extremely confident in the skill set that he brings to the table, and I mean, it really showed.
Yeah, he looked good. I mean, he's 12-1. He's starting to get a name for himself out there. I would suspect he's going to get a pretty tough opponent next.
Yeah,
with the resume he's putting together.
Yeah, and being in that light heavyweight division, like not to say that Jan Blachowicz is not, a worthy champion, but the light heavyweight division, I would say, is as open of a division as we have in the current state of the UFC right now. Just obviously with, it being a weight class that Jon Jones has dominated for so long, it has almost been a weight class that not many people have paid attention to, kind of one that they just assumed was kind of a dead weight class until Jon leaves. And now, Jon leaves and now presents, it's kind of like...
Yeah, he kind of washed it all out, and now he left, and it's like now there's this chance for so many people to have a chance to grow and make a name for themselves. I mean, for so many years, it was just, okay, Jon Jones or about anyone else in this division.
You cut out a little bit, but...
Well, anyways, long story short, Jon Jones leaving this division definitely opened up.
Yeah. I'm going to nerd out a little bit. Isn't that very similar to the movie The Battle of the Five Armies, The Lord of the Rings? Right? Wasn't there something that, finally opened up, the dragon, left the cage or the cave, and then there was, the dwarves and the elves and the orcs and everybody were trying to get to this one goal. I can't remember exactly what they were
fighting. I wish I could help you here, but I don't know if I've ever seen Lord of the Rings. So.
Oh, well, for the listeners out there, I think it's the Battle of the Five Armies, but whatever. The second one I wanted to talk about was Jessica Andrade in her debut at flyweight. She looked absolutely amazing. I wrote down that she handled the weight fine. I thought that it was going to look more drastic with Katlyn Chookagian at 5'9" and Jessica Andrade at 5'1". But it really did not look like a mismatch. I mean, it looked weird, Chookagian being so much bigger, but I said that her ability to smash her way into the pocket versus a bigger, longer Chookagian did not seem like it was, too tough of, a goal for her to achieve.
No, that was definitely a big win for her. A dominant, decisive victory. Really gets her back on track as well.
Yeah.
I think she seems to have a lot of power. I think sometimes, especially with your fighters that are known more for their power or knockout strength and stuff, guys who are heavy hitters, I think sometimes the weight cut really hurts them.
Yeah.
Makes them a little bit weaker as opposed to maybe a more technical point fighter. So maybe that extra weight is benefiting her to being able to really deal out some more damage with these punches and have higher volume.
And one of the first, not one of the first, but one of the few body shot finishes, body shot TKOs we've seen in a while, especially in a women's fight. I mean, she clocked her with, it looked like it may have broken Chookagian's rib. From one end of the octagon, Chookagian shot out, spun, grabbed her chest or grabbed her rib, kind of winced, and then Andrade then, came in, finished her off. up against the octagon on the total other side. I mean, literally chased her 25, 30 feet and then put another hard body shot right in the same spot. And she just, I know in a group chat that we were in with a couple guys on Twitter, they were a little bit upset at the stoppage due to the fact that there was only 5 seconds left. But man, she went full fetal position. I mean, it was brutal.
Yeah, you got to.
I think it was a good stoppage.
Yeah. And she wasn't. Caitlin Chookagian was not going to win that fight.
No. And I picked Jessica Andrade. I think you did too. So, kudos to us.
Yeah, I think we're confident about that.
Yeah. And then we get to the main event, Korean Zombie versus Brian Ortega 2.0. Holy crap, Brian Ortega brought it. And my initial notes when I was watching it was, does Zombie look bad or does Ortega look sharp or is it a combination of both? I have never known Korean Zombie to be, I don't want to use the term lackadaisical, but he's never had a problem pulling the trigger. And that's what it seemed like.
Yeah, I don't know. When those guys have those long breaks, like, it's easy to count him out, but you don't know. No one really knows besides Brian Ortega and the people around him what he was doing with that time. And obviously he was using that to become a better fighter.
Oh my goodness.
Striker.
His striking was immaculate.
Yeah.
I mean, he landed multiple spinning elbows. I mean, he was absolutely just, I mean, his defense, I mean, he had that left arm up and blocking preemptively the whole time. And when you shut down, or when he shut down Korean Zombie's right hand, and I mean, I'd never seen Korean Zombie work like that.
Yep, and matching everyone coming into this, I think it was widely accepted that the Korean Zombie was going to have better striking, and for Brian Ortega to get a win in this fight, probably was going to have to get on the ground. And then Brian Ortega he was out striking him the whole time, and the Korean Zombie had nowhere to run. I mean, there's nowhere to hide if that's your best spot and he's better than you there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think giving Ortega the next title shot is the right thing to do.
And I had a conversation with my brother today about this same topic, and I want to see Brian Ortega get the next title shot because I think it will be an interesting matchup between him and Volkanovski. I don't know if he has a better chance at beating Volkanovski than Max did, but I do have a hard time really justifying Brian Ortega's shot at the belt only because Brian Ortega's last fight was an absolute blowout of Holloway versus Ortega. And I think it is beyond anybody's stretch of the imagination right now that Brian Ortega is the second best featherweight in the world. I think that title still belongs to Max, but then we lead into this conversation of if we give Max a third shot, even though I think it's widely accepted that he deserves a third shot.
Why? Why do you think he deserves a third one?
Because I think more people than not believe that he won that second fight. I am not one of those people. Yep. I think that Volkanovski won both.
Robbed in front of all of our faces, but okay.
But let's go into hypotheticals here. Let's say now Max wins round 3 against Volkanovski. Then you have to give Volkanovski then a chance. You can't give Max Holloway 2 chances and now a third chance, and then he wins. You've got to give Volk another chance.
I'd rather not.
But you have to. You cannot baby Max Holloway into this third chance, and then if he wins, not give Volkanovski a chance back. Then that leads into, if Max Holloway wins again, now they're 2-2, right? Now you got to have a grudge match, but do we really want to hold the division up for 5 fights between these two guys?
Yeah.
Part of me thinks that Ortega needs to be able to get past Holloway to get to Volkanovski, but a lot of me doesn't want to see a Volkanovski-Holloway 6-year rivalry.
Yeah, I don't want to see it again as much as I think Max Holloway is the rightful champ right now, but that's not really here nor there. I would be excited for a Volkanovski Ryan Ortega fight. I think Max Holloway's got to fight somebody else. I don't know who though. I mean,
I say give him Zabit.
Yeah, give him Zabit. That's probably the best option. I mean, you can't give the Korean Zombie and Max Holloway now after that.
No.
I mean, I'm just looking at the rankings right now of the top guys. Zabit makes by far the most sense.
Yeah, you got Yair Rodriguez floating out there. I know he just obviously pulled out of his fight versus Zabit due to, I believe, an ankle injury. But
And really drops off after that. Yeah, like Calvin Kattar, Jeremy Stephen. I mean, those. I think there's the top 5, and I think there's like a big space between the next guys.
Yeah. So, I'm excited for an Ortega versus Volkanovski title shot, but I just have a hard time actually believing that Brian Ortega is the guy that deserves to be in the octagon with Volkanovski, knowing that Max Holloway still exists and is out there. And I do believe that with one more win, Max Holloway does get the next title shot, whether that's against Volkanovski or Ortega, should Ortega upend Volkanovski, which I don't see happening. But I mean, to be honest, I think Max Holloway's best chance back at the belt is for Ortega to win against Volkanovski and then Max to retake it from Ortega.
Yep. Max needs to get a decisive win.
Yes. Which I don't think anyone can hang with Max Holloway other than Volkanovski.
Yeah, and I don't even know that he can.
Well, I know. Well, the last 2 fights would suggest otherwise. All right, so now we get into our pay-per-view event for this next coming week, UFC 254, headlined by Khabib, the Eagle Nurmagomedov versus Justin the Highlight Gaethje.
Yes, sir. Should we start out with a couple of highlights of some guys we want to?
Yeah.
We want to talk about? You want to talk about that first?
Yeah, I'll talk about my my undercard fighter, and my undercard fighter is certainly not an unknown undercard fighter, but a fan favorite, a guy that really could use a win here. But I chose to do Smiling Sam Alvey, the light heavyweight that is a UFC vet of almost 20 UFC fights. I said almost 20 UFC fights. It is 20 UFC fights. He's got the smiley face shaved into the back of his head. He's always smiling. He might be the most likable fighter in the UFC currently, and maybe the UFC ever. He is on a skid as of late. He's dropped his last 4 fights, and before that, he had won 2 fights, both by split decision. So one could make the argument that he is possibly on a 6-fight, skid. Yeah. He's definitely after 20 UFC fights at the end of his career. And he even is the plus 300 underdog.
He's got a pretty formidable opponent here.
Yes. But my point to bring this up is that if those casual fans don't know who Smiling Sam Alvey is, somebody that you definitely should know, definitely should be a fan of. I think everyone that knows of Sam Alvey is a fan of his. He has notable wins over John Vellante, Rashad Evans, Gerald Meerschaert. I mean, he has these big wins. And he's coming off a split decision loss to Ryan Spann, another guy that we've talked about on the podcast. So, and a split decision loss to Ryan Spann is nothing to scoff at. I mean, that's a quality light heavyweight in this current division. But, right now this weekend he's fighting Da Un Jung, who I personally don't know, but he is a massive underdog. I mean, when you look at Sam Alvey, he's definitely a guy that's nearing the end of his career and really could probably use a win this weekend and ride off into the sunset as the smiling man that ended on a win. But,
Yeah, I think he's being used again as a stepping stone for the UFC.
Yep.
I believe this may be his UFC debut here.
Yep. I was trying to look at some stats, and he had 0 octagon time and a few other stats. So I believe this is his debut.
I think he's got a lot of knockouts too, which with an older guy with a suspect chin at this stage of his career is not usually a good combination, but you never know.
Yeah. But essentially, if I had the editing skills to right now present a Sam Alvey appreciation video that had nice music and Sam Alvey smiling and him getting his hand raised, I would put it there, which is what I would love to see this weekend.
Okay, I actually highlighted the next fight. We have a UFC fighter by the name of Shavkat Rakhmonov. He's 12-0 coming into the UFC with 12 finishes. He's training in Kazakhstan. I watched a couple of his fights. I watched one of them. He got rocked really hard, and he's got a good chin. He recovered fast and got the finish still later that round. I mean, he's got submissions. He's really well-rounded as a striker. I think he mostly likes to stand up. He does have submissions, but I think that's a lot of times situations where he's knocked the guy down and jumped on and put him in a darce or something like that. But he's going to be really fun to watch. He's actually a plus 140 underdog. He's fighting Alex Cowboy Oliveira.
Oliveira. Yep.
Oliveira, yeah. Anyways, but so that's kind of a rough first UFC fight.
Yeah, that's a tough night out for anybody in the division, let alone a debut.
Alex is 22-8. He's got on a 2-win streak. I mean, he beat Carlos Condit back in the day. He's recently lost to Mike Perry. I think he's on a 2-win streak right now. He's it'll be a tough fight, but it'll be fun to see where this Shavkat really is. I like that they're just throwing him straight into the fire.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I wonder, why they throw some guys right into the fire like Shavkat and other guys, kind of like Hamza, not necessarily right into the fire.
Or a guy like a guy like Sean O'Malley has never fought a fighter you could argue as good as Alex Oliveira. Ever.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy's getting him first. He's really young too. Shavkat's like 23 or something.
Jeez.
So I don't know. It'd be fun to see. He's should be a fun fight. I think they'll stand up and bang.
Yeah, absolutely. So now looking at the main card, a fight that we've covered already, a fight that is now labeled as the cursed fight. I hope it goes down this weekend between Magomed Ankalaev and I heard somebody call Cutelaba Ian. Is there any chance that his name might be pronounced Ian? Because I've been saying Ion, but I don't think it's Ion.
Hearing Ian and looking at it, I'm going to say it for sure is Ian.
All right, so let's say Ian Cutelaba.
Sounds way better than Ion. No one named their kid Ion.
Yeah, well, I am a science teacher, so I liked the name Ion. But last time, I believe it got called off due to COVID. I can't remember who popped for COVID. The time before that, they were standing and banging, and Cutelaba supposedly pretended like he was rocked to then draw him in and then bludgeon him, and the ref stopped it. So it was a very controversial stoppage, to say the least.
He did get kicked hard 2 times in the head, though. I mean, he was on the ropes. I think Cutelaba, I don't know if he landed a fight. He landed a strike that whole fight.
Yeah.
He was outmatched the first time. I am kind of surprised I'm surprised they ran it back. I would have said, the stoppage was a little early, but it appears that Ankalaev is a much better fighter than Ian is. But they're doing it. They got a little bit of drama. Ian been up in Magomed's face, and I don't know. It should be fun to see what happens. I hope if Ian wins, it's going to be weird.
Yeah. I can't tell you that I am not excited about this fight. I know that it may not seem like it is maybe even a competitive fight. I mean, I don't know what more Ankalaev could have done in that first fight to establish that he was,
besides hitting him out cold, like dropping him cold.
Yeah. Which they didn't even give him a chance to.
No. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's why he's Ankalaev's a minus 280 favorite. I mean, he's a heavy favorite here.
Right.
Actually, let's roll back just to one more fight on the undercard. Your boy Casey Kenny's fighting too.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I almost forgot about Casey Kenny.
He's fighting Nathaniel Wood. Kenny's a minus 200 favorite, 15-1. Wood is 17-4, coming off a loss to John Dodson. Casey Kenny obviously looked really good earlier this month when he fought.
I'm really happy with Dana White and his ability to get Kenny back in. Back to Fight Island. Is Casey Kenny going to be our first Fight Island 2-timer?
Well, Chimaev
I think he only fought once at Fight Island, didn't he?
Like twice in 1 week.
Yeah, but were those both at Fight Island?
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay. So maybe Chimaev's fought at Fight Island 3 times. But regardless, one of these guys that are, a repeated competitor at Fight Island, I'm here for it. We talked about Casey Kenny in our fighter highlight in a previous episode. I'm really high on him. He's the man. He has made the shift from flyweight up now to bantamweight. He was, I believe, the only simultaneous champ in LFA history at 125 and 135 at the same time, holding both belts, and has come into the UFC and been pretty much a devastator outside of maybe one loss to Merab Dvalishvili.
Yep, that's the really only hiccup. I mean, he's beat Brandon Royval and Ray Borg. I mean, he's beat good fighters.
He's beat the who's who in the flyweight and bantamweight circuit from what he has fought thus far. And I think a win here against Nathaniel Wood would now put him, maybe not quite into that, Aljamain Sterling, Cody Garbrandt, company, but certainly another win away from being in that company.
Yeah, I think he knew he needed another win before he was going to get one of the top tier opponents. And I think he figured he didn't take much damage last time. He's like, let's just get this. Let's fight right away and get this over. So I know I'm going to get myself a good fight. And
yeah,
I think it's a good move. I think these UFC fighters are really smart to move when they get a little bit of hype going behind them to fight again soon, because like I might be excited about a guy, but then if he doesn't fight for 8 months, it wears off.
Yeah.
The guy is fighting in a couple weeks again too. I mean, the UFC is doing a good job of riding these hype trains as they come right now.
Yes, and MMA is such a what have you done for me lately type sport that, like you said, you want to keep riding that wave of, you had a great fight, you got some exposure, people know who you are, get back in there.
Mm-hmm. Because once you start losing too or not fighting, it goes away fast.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Moving up into the main card, I'm going to skip over a few fights that I know nothing about. If you want to cover these ones, feel free. Tell me to shut up. But I really am interested in this Walt Harris, Alexander Volkov heavyweight duel. It's right before the co-main event, but this is definitely a pay-per-view heavyweight, meat of the main card fight. I'm excited for it.
I am super excited for this fight. I think Walt Harris is 13-8. He's a slight underdog at plus 125.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a win over Oleinik. He just lost to Alistair Overeem, and he had Overeem right on the ropes in the first round.
I thought could have been stopped.
The fight could have. I'm not saying it should have, but it could. Like it wouldn't. The stop for Ankalaev and Ian Cutelaba was worse than that fight was. I mean, Overeem was in.
Would have stopped it. I think some people would have been upset, but I don't think it was outlandish if they would have stopped it. But
you would have got a rematch.
Yeah. But now kudos to Alistair Overeem then for coming back and putting it on him. But man, Walt Harris is definitely the big ticket.
Walt Harris he's 13-8 with 13 finishes, and I believe all of those are in the first round. I mean, he is. They might not all be in the first round, but he comes out guns a-blazing.
His cardio is extremely suspect.
Yes.
But he's, definitely, and I think he knows that. I think his game plan is to go out there and finish it within the first 5 minutes.
Which is going to make this fight really exciting right away, because Volkov's kind of the opposite. He's not, he can win a decision fight. His most recent win was over Greg Hardy when he won unanimous decision. He got pounded by Curtis Blades a few months ago for 5 rounds, I believe that fight was. He's got a loss to Derek Lewis, but he can fight a full 5-round fight, and he's been in the game forever. He debuted in Bellator in 2012.
Yep. Yeah, Volkov is definitely what you would call a vet. Definitely an MMA vet.
Yep, that's why he is a minus 155 favorite in this fight. Who do you got?
Boy, I think my heart tells me that Volkov's probably going to come away with this one, but I think that Walt Harris definitely has the advantage in that first round. I think if somebody's going to win in the first round, obviously it's going to be Walt Harris, but I think if it leaves that first round, I have a hard time, envisioning Walt Harris coming out with that energy that he usually comes out with.
Yeah, I'm actually so mad at you for having that opinion on this fight, because I'm picking Walt Harris to win this fight via knockout in the first one. I really was, I'm like, for sure Nelson's going to be like Volkov for winning this fight for sure. And I was ready to fight you about it, but
sorry, my fight assessment I think may have been too accurate.
Yeah, I think if this fight goes past the first round, we're gonna have a Volkov decision. If not, obviously if not, I think Harris can get a knockout in the first round.
Yeah.
Volkov showed some holes in his game against Blades.
Yeah.
Now Harris isn't going to take him down like that, but
yeah,
Volkov's got some problems that I think Walt Harris can take advantage of.
Yeah, and I think that Walt Harris has some weaknesses that Volkov can take care of. I think they're two
fighting more than 5 minutes
different fighters. Yeah.
But I look at Walt Harris like he's on par with Alistair Overeem right now. I think they're pretty similar. I think if they fought 5 times, I think it'd go 3 ways, one person to the other, I think. So
Yeah.
he's only 13-8, but he's been fighting big dogs for a little while now, and
Yeah.
I think this could be a big win for him here.
Yep. And I think one thing that is a resounding trend in Walt Harris's career is that every time he comes out, he is improved. I think every time we see Walt Harris, it's a better version of Walt Harris. So, I'm hoping that we see that this weekend.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, moving on to our co-main event, we have the Reaper, Bobby Knuckles, Robert Whitaker, versus Jared Cannonier, a member of the MMA Lab. Everybody knows how much of fans we are of the MMA Lab. I wonder what Cal's take on this fight is.
Oh, this is going to be a fun. I might be more excited about this fight than I am for the main event. I'm not, but the actual watching, I think this fight will be more entertaining than the main event. This is going to be, I think this fight is going to be crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Robert Whitaker, 21-5, wins over. He most recently beat Darren Till. He's beat Yoel Romero twice. Derek Brunson. He's 10-1 since 2014, and that only loss is to Izzy when he lost the belt.
Yep.
But Jared Cannonier's a stud too. At 13-4, he's recently cut down. Well, somewhat recently, he's cut down to middleweight, where he's a giant. He's 3-0 there with 3 KOs, and 2 of those being Jack Hermanson and Anderson Silva.
Yeah.
His last 2 losses were to Dominic Reyes and Jan Blachowicz. So since he's come down, he has looked really good and strong and big at middleweight. I think he is going to be a problem for Whitaker, but I don't see him beating Whitaker in this fight.
Yeah,
I have Robert Whitaker winning. He's the slight underdog here. It's pretty much even odds, but I think this is a huge fight for both these guys. I think the next guy gets the title shot, but I have Bobby Knuckles as winning this fight.
Yeah. And, our, great friend Trace Engelkiss was on the podcast twice now, most recently last week. And shout out to Trace. He had just won his pro debut via first-round submission, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on the end of the episode. But training at the MMA Lab, I know firsthand who Jared Cannonier has been working on his wrestling with, one of those people being Trace Engelkiss. And as confident as I am that he is improving there, I got to go with Bobby Knuckles. I don't think that we can use the loss to Izzy as now a reason as to why he's going to lose to anyone else. Robert Whitaker has solidified himself as an absolute top dog in this middleweight division, and I don't think that losing to Izzy now means, maybe he can't beat this guy either. Like, you know what I mean? Everyone has proven that they can't beat Izzy. And I think if we were standing here talking maybe Paulo versus Cannonier, maybe we'd be having a different discussion. But I hold Bobby Knuckles and Robert Whitaker just in such high esteem that I don't see him losing this one.
Yeah. The other thing is, if you're looking at their most recent losses, if Izzy fought either Dominic Reyes or Jan right now, he would be the favorite, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't hold losing to Izzy against Robert Whitaker and then also say, well, Jared Cannonier lost to Jan and Dominic Reyes, but that was up a weight class. Now he's down. Like, you can't. A loss to Izzy means nothing. It means you're not the best fighter in the world, essentially.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, I think we're both on the same page. I think that's going to be an awesome fight.
Yeah. And I think we also very well may get an angry text message from our friend Trace, maybe when he hears this. But that's just what I think. I hope he proves me wrong. Well, maybe I don't hope that, but this is truly, I wouldn't be upset or happy with any result. I like both of these fighters, so, yeah, it's going to be a fun one.
Uh-huh. And I'd be fine with seeing either of these guys fight Izzy. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's not a ton to get excited for right now with as good as Israel Adesanya has looked, but I'd be a little bit excited to see either of these guys give it a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, moving on to the main event of the evening, and maybe one of the main events of the entire year of 2020, one of the most hyped up fights, one of the most interesting fights stylistically for Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Justin Gaethje. Man, I'm so excited. I think everyone is excited for this. I think the whole MMA world is excited for this. What are your takes on this fight?
Well, this is a crazy fight. Khabib's coming in as a huge favorite at minus 335, which I knew
he should, I think.
Yeah. I mean, he's never lost. He's lost one round ever. So, I mean, he can't, there's no holes you can find right now. God, I'm excited about this. So, the one thing that no one is talking about, and maybe I'm totally wrong for considering this, but Khabib may have had a weird training camp leading up to this. I know obviously he lost his dad.
Mm-hmm.
He's had a lot of different things going on with the pandemic. And you look at a guy like Justin Gaethje, who won a big fight against Tony Ferguson. And then during the pandemic, so
Yep.
he's fought once with the weird training, weird time. And now he has that experience to come into this fight. I would assume he had a pretty normal training camp for this fight. I think that could be a non-factor. Maybe Khabib had his best camp ever, but it's something to consider that things could be different.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's still like everyone's saying, it's going to come down to whether Gaethje can stop Khabib from taking him down.
Yep.
And whether Khabib cannot get caught by a right hand from Justin.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about this fight is I think that although we all see, and he's marketed as such, as Justin Gaethje as the most violent man in MMA, this reckless, absolutely abomination of a striker. Dude, I watched the Tony fight again, and Gaethje's striking was really clean. He was hitting counter strikes. Now, don't get me wrong, he still had that reckless, fire under him, but it was a different striker than we had seen in previous. The Justin Gaethje that beat Tony Ferguson was not the Justin Gaethje that was losing to Eddie Alvarez. That his other loss is Poirier, I believe.
Yep. Poirier. I mean, that guy was just throwing punches and leaving his head right down center lane and just throwing punches to throw punches. It was like he had a shot clock in his head that every 5 seconds a buzzer was going off that he needed to throw. And when he got to the Ferguson fight, he was patient and waited and landed precision strikes on Tony Ferguson and totally dismantled him.
Yeah.
Like we've never seen.
No one has ever done that to Tony Ferguson. No. Ever.
And so let's say that was the only fight you could look at. The only fight for Justin Gaethje is what he's done most recent and not what he's done before that. I mean, 22-2, he's obviously had an outstanding career, but that fighter on that night was a step above maybe everybody else in the world.
Yeah. And I can't disagree with you. That being said, I do want to get into a little bit of a breakdown of what Khabib brings to the table. I don't see Justin Gaethje winning this fight. Even though I am maybe one of the biggest Justin Gaethje fans, I don't know how you can go against the man who's never been beaten until proven otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And one thing that I kind of get annoyed with, and maybe this is just me, but of all of our dominant champions, let's just consider the two, Khabib and Jon Jones, that are ultra dominant in their weight classes. I feel like every single time that they go to defend their belt, the whole entire community jumps on the bandwagon and says, this is the guy that's going to do it. And it almost seems, from maybe not a stylistic perspective, but from a chirping perspective, that the dominant champion is almost the underdog. Like right now, I feel like more people are picking Justin Gaethje to beat Khabib Nurmagomedov than people are picking Khabib to beat Justin. And although I think it's an interesting fight and you could make the case for either, I think people just inherently want to see people who are up here just get knocked down. I think they want to see the champ lose, and I don't understand that.
Mm-hmm. Well,
how many of the last guys that Jon Jones has fought has everybody been like, yep, this is the one. Yep, this is the guy that presents the biggest problem for – and he keeps running through them. Whether or not you believe that Dominic Reyes won that last one, I mean, he is still proving that he is the best guy.
But Khabib's never even had a stumble. Like Jon Jones loses rounds. Jon Jones fights close fights.
Yeah.
Khabib dominates everyone.
Yeah. And why would we believe that this fight is going to be any different than what he has faced in the past? And I mean, you could make the argument that Khabib has never wrestled an absolute high-level wrestler, such as a Division I All-American in Justin Gaethje. I think people have brought up Abel Trujillo, I don't know how to pronounce that. And he was a 4-time NAIA All-American. But, I mean, you and I both being NCAA Division III wrestlers, I think we understand that there is a very big difference between a Division I All-American and an NAIA All-American. And to us, I mean, Division III All-Americans. We're both D3 guys till we die, and I think that we would understand the difference between those.
You and I have both, just like some perspective to add on to that, you and I both have wrestled D3 All-Americans and gotten takedowns. And
Yeah.
it's not a big deal. When I was wrestling a Hawkeye and I took him down, the whole lacrosse community thought, the wrestling community was like, oh my God, that's the craziest thing ever. That was so cool. And I got a takedown and lost 25-9. I mean, that's the difference. I mean, that really is the difference. Like, me getting a takedown felt like winning a match for me against these top level guys. And so an NAIA national champ isn't, for the most part, I mean, there's going to be some guys that are, but for the most part isn't even that comparable to most big D1 starters or national qualifiers.
Yeah.
But I think, and people, all people talk about with Gaethje is how strong he is, how hard he hits. But Khabib's fought good strikers who are better strikers than him. And are you going to tell me that Gaethje's a more proficient striker than McGregor was in his prime? It's debatable. I mean, probably not.
A different type of striker, but
yes. But as far as people are talking, oh, he's got this power, he's going to knock him out. McGregor's got the freaking death touch.
Yep. And here, and I'm going to counteract myself. I'm going to contradict what I just said. And I'm going to give a reason I think that Gaethje may be able to strike with Khabib a little better than Conor did. I think that Conor was so worried about the takedown that he really was not able to open up his striking as much as he wanted or he was able to. Whereas Justin Gaethje, I think, doesn't have to worry about the takedown as much because I think he has that muscle memory, that natural ability to maybe defend takedowns a little bit more. I mean, when you look at Justin Gaethje and his college wrestling career, he was not an offensive monster. In fact, he hardly took down anybody.
Yeah.
But a notable guy that he did wrestle at the national tournament that he only gave up one takedown against was Jordan Burroughs. And to think that Jordan Burroughs was pretty much the only guy that was able to take Justin Gaethje down in the whole NCAA. Not to say that he wasn't taken down by other people or even that he hasn't been taken down in other MMA fights, but I think that fear of getting taken down is not so much in Justin Gaethje's head, and I think he can focus more on his striking, where I feel like Conor was so worried about
he knew if he gets taken down, this fight is for sure that round, but this fight is in real danger of being over. And that's a good point to put that. Justin can go out there kind of with the normal game plan.
Yeah.
I mean, and I would assume, is not as afraid of being taken down. I would assume he feels more comfortable with his ability to get back to his feet.
Yep. The thing that Justin has to worry about is not getting backed up to the cage. He cannot get pressed up against that cage. And that's like the most, obviously he knows that. Everybody in the world knows that. But I think he's more worried about getting backed up to the cage than he is getting taken down out in the middle. And I think that he can let his hands go when they are standing out in the middle of that octagon.
My big take for this fight, I think this fight will be won on the breaks. I think we're going to get Khabib shot and we're going to get a Gaethje sprawl. And if he's successful in sprawling, it's going to be if he can land 2 shots on Khabib immediately after defending the shot, or Khabib's going to shoot when Justin throws punches.
Yep.
It's going to be on those breaks where this fight is won.
Yes, absolutely.
But yeah, I am praying and hoping and wishing that Justin Gaethje ends the Khabib reign over this lightweight division, but I don't know. It's tough to say that I think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I will put this fight as I want Justin Gaethje to win. I believe that Khabib will win. But I think that it will be a fun one. I think that it will live up to the hype. You know, it's either going to be an incredible shootout or it is going to be your run-of-the-mill. Khabib takes him down, presses him up against the cage, and ground and pounds him, which is very possible.
This is the first fight I'm actually sad that there's not fans at. Like, the rest of the fights, it hasn't really affected me, but just the idea of, like, seeing Gaethje beat Khabib in a huge audience full of people and, like, just the place erupt is something we're going to miss out on if it happens. But
yeah, I mean, if it does happen, you know, Justin Gaethje will have 2 wins over arguably 2 of the best lightweights of all time in an arena with no fans in Tony Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov.
I would assume have snapped the 2 longest active win streaks in the UFC
Yes.
in that division.
Because Tony was on a 12.
Yep.
And I believe Khabib is probably at least on an 8 or 9.
In the UFC, yeah. Yes.
And in his career, a 28.
28, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Another knock I have against Khabib, one of the reasons I don't really like him is he just never was super active his whole career. And he got the belt, and I would have liked to see him fight more. But teach his own.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with that being said, that's all we got for this week's main episode. We're going to be trying out some other things as far as content goes, and so stay updated. If you're following us on YouTube, please take this time to hit the subscribe button, like the video. It helps us out a lot. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast, please subscribe, stay updated to when we come out with our weekly episode.
Yep. Shout out Trace, the big win.
Shout out Trace, friend of the podcast, Trace Engelkiss. Got it done in under a minute with the Darce choke. It was awesome. But, man, next time you come on, we might need to talk about that nickname. All right, so that's all we got for you guys today. Rock on.